what happened on those streets that night, nobody, I don't want even our enemies to even face that, to be very honest, because it's something which we shudder and shiver just the thought of. Still, I mean, at this age, I still shudder at the very thought of it. So I don't want anybody to go through that. So those mobs carrying those torches and lanterns and screaming their heads off, like "Yahan kya banega, Nizami Mustafa," but relive, galil, salute, perish, join, or just flee, and leave your woman behind. That they would say, leave your woman behind, and we'll kill the men folk. Those. It was surreal for us, to be very honest. Initially, we didn't even know what is happening. We thought, like, me in my personal space thought, because my dad has gotten threats, so they are coming to kill us. So for me, it was like, okay, they are coming to burn our house, burn us alive. So what is the immediate response? You turn the lights off in your home. What's that going to do? Then you see that your neighbor, next door neighbors who are from the majority community, they are joining this mob too. So you don't have anywhere to even go. And suddenly your phone starts ringing. And these are the colleagues and friends from the majority community, my dad's friends, who are trying to tell him, don't worry, they're not coming to do any harm to you. They're just trying to make a statement. Now, if a person 50 miles from your home is sending you this message, that means that person already knew about it. If a person calling from 100 miles away from your home is sending you this message, telling you to hold off and don't worry, just turn your lights off, this and that, nothing is going to happen, that means they were all in it together. So that should be very clear, because we are being constantly told that it was just a few miscreants. Sometimes when they mention these words, it just boils my blood. They were not miscreants. It was the neighbor. It was my friend whose attire changed overnight, whose look changed overnight, whose body language changed overnight. It was not just one person, two people, or just a bunch of goons. It was the whole majority community that was out there making a statement, as they said.
It was a normal night. I was 18. I still remember I was watching a movie on TV, and my parents were sleeping. It was just the three of us in the house, and suddenly you imagine an 18-year-old just watching TV, and outside there was this blaring of the loudspeakers from the local religious places. And I couldn't make the head and tail of what's going on. And then I looked out of the window and I saw our house was slightly away from the main road. But when I looked at the main road, we saw all these crowds of people. They were chanting slogans. And some of them were holding, what we call as mashals in India, and torches and lanterns. And I was thinking, what is going on? What is happening? I couldn't make out at that point what they were saying. So I woke my parents up and I said, something is happening. Just wake up. So we all looked out of the window. And then by that time, we were able to make some head and tail of what the slogans were. And like your colleague said earlier, it was things like relive, salif, the gale, which means, convert, die, or, or just join us. So things like that, and things like Indian dogs go back. There were a lot of very anti-Indian slogans at that time, and things like we want Kashmir with the Pandit women but without the Pandit men. So I remember being totally shocked, because I had never heard these slogans before. And then to see a mass of hundreds of people actually on the main road saying all these, you can imagine what it does to an 18-year-old girl. So, and then the phones started ringing, the landline, and people were saying this is happening across the whole town, across whole of Srinagar and across the whole Kashmir. So the same scenario was being replicated, if in on all the main streets of Srinagar, and that just totally panicked us. And I remember my parents, my aunt, she lived next door, so my parents said, let's lock the house and just let's go to her, and at least we'll be 5 or 6 of us together. So we went to her house. And the thing I really want to say here is, which I vividly remember, we were sitting on her balcony. We were all very traumatized, all men, children, old people. And then one of my cousin's wife, she was crying, and I asked her, why are you crying? And she said, do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of 1947, when the Kabalis raid. So we had, in 1947, we had events when Kabalis from across the border raided Kashmir. They couldn't reach Srinagar because they were stopped by the Indian army on the way. But she started crying, saying this is how it started then, because her family had been killed at that time, her grandparents, I think. And she said, this is how it starts. So you have these mobs, and then suddenly they will enter the homes and people will be killed, and the whole town will be totally wiped out. And that, I remember that just totally freaked me out. And then obviously everyone was panicking and crying. And I could hear my parents, they were talking about things like poison and what will we do with the girls. So I could hear some things being talked about. And I was thinking, okay, what is the plan now? There is no plan. So if this mob suddenly comes into the inner roads and attacks us, we have no defense, we have no weapons. If you know, people have talked about us being very, we are a very literate community. Our focus has mostly been on books, so we don't have any weapons.
It's not something easy for us to listen because it has gone through us. It's not a movie. It's like we have experienced it, especially when we are children. But I recall that time, remember that time, which brings me shivers even after 31 years right now, because I went back 31 years before. My time changed back, but I was in that phase last 1 hour. I recall that mob of thousands of people surrounding our home and family, and they were not strangers. They were our own neighbors in that mob who were harassing us, abusing us, and asking us to convert to their religion. And I again want to repeat, they were not strangers. They were our own friends and our own neighbors with whom we had been playing. I have seen my own school friends in that mob. So that was scary. If it was some strangers in that mob, we would have thought, okay, maybe we'll go to our neighbors and take some help. But when your own people come to, kill you or ask you to convert to their faith, that is scary. Then you are totally unsafe. And in that phase, and it was not one time, it was like it was happening, like I think it became more intense from 1989 October onwards. That's what I remember. So it used to be every now and then. And then my mother actually from I think 1989 beginning onwards only, we felt very unsafe as Hindus in Kashmir. And my mother had taught me that because some incidents also happened, they took away girls from Hindu families, did all that bad nonsense things which we can't even take on our tongue also. So and my mother was also very young that time, maybe early 40s. So she had taught me, that, and I was the only daughter in my home. I had two brothers, so always the whole attention used to be on me. Like I was feeling like I'm the curse in the home, because my parents both were more worried about me than my brothers. And my mom was to tell me that we have a, if somebody enters our home, so my mother used to tell me that we should go to a small storeroom. We used to have a small storeroom in Srinagar. I am born in Srinagar, Kashmir, and in a place, and she used to taught me, we have a storeroom where we used to keep grains for whole winter time. In every Hindu home, it used to be the, and like we used to have that to go down kind of thing. My mom says, if anybody breaks our door, we both should only focus us on me and my mother, not on my father, not on my two brothers. It was looking like me and my mother is like something, no reason for the curse on our family. She had taught me to take that poison. I remember there was something in the cupboard which I never touched, thanks to my Ganpati Baba, which I never touched. But my mother has told me that there's a poison. We both should take it and, die. And that's how we can save the dignity of our family. So that was shivering for me to understand. Like I was feeling that the life of a girl, I was not knowing girls have equal freedom and equal rights like boys, because that is how I was not brought up. I was brought up that I have to die, not my brothers, not my father. Me and my mother only has to die if somebody enters. That was a big trauma in my mind until we actually left Kashmir and reached to Jammu, and then I felt, freedom of, that, oh no, I can live like boys can live, men can live. And these slogans where they used to always come, as I again want to say, from our neighbors, from our friends who were in the mob, they were giving these slogans that you convert or be ready to die. And they used to say, we are interested in keeping only Hindu women safe. We don't want to kill Hindu women. We only want to kill Hindu men. Now, at that time, I did not understand what all this means. Now you can understand what this means. Why they wanted to keep Hindu women safe. That's the trauma, it will never go away from my mind. That's what I remember when I was in Srinagar, and that's when I remember,
When I was in Kashmir, and when you are of that young of an age, you only remember things that are extremely um, impactful. And I remember very, very fond memories of snowfall and, playing with my sister and stuff like that. Also, a very strong memory, which was negative. Um, so it's just in scenes that I remember, and this particular scene I just cannot forget. And my sister, when she read an article where I had shared this, and she said, "I remember every bit of this." And but me and my sister have not talked about it ever in our lives to each other. And this is how I don't know why it is like that, but this is how I guess trauma is. What I remember was that my mother was suddenly panicking, and she told me and my sister to go into a corner, to not make a noise, and to shut our eyes. And she put us in a corner of a living room, which was of a house that my dad had newly constructed. It was only like 6 months old, so the windows and everything were yet to be finished, but they had like glasses on them. and and I remember that because I was the smallest one, they wanted to protect me the most. So I was in the corner, and then my sister was on top of me, standing, and my mother was in front of all of us and protecting us. And what I hear, because my eyes are shut, what I hear is that from all the directions of the house, there are like sticks being banged on the windows for so long. I don't even know how long it was. And my heart was racing, and I was not breathing. I didn't know what was happening, but I was certainly terrorized. I cannot forget that memory. And that was in February, because my dad refused to leave in January because he wanted to stay. And he said, "I'll do anything that is needed. If you want me to convert, I will." And it is that kind of a desperation. But then he was at work on that day, and when this happened, and we just got death threats the same night, and then my dad kind of gave up, but not really gave up until later on. But yeah, that's the memory that I have from Kashmir.
And it's 19th January, actually, I had my exam in the morning. I had already taken an exam. I had another exam on 21st. And this didn't stop on 19th January. 20th January night, 21st January night, the same thing was repeated. And we didn't have a choice. My father didn't have a choice but to move me out. He didn't care about his life. He didn't care about my mother. He didn't care about his father. But he cared that my daughter, maybe, she goes to the university, she may be abducted or something. So I was sent out on 23rd of January. Now, another point I want to make here is I didn't leave forever. I had a return ticket because I was supposed to submit my dissertation in March. Everything got left behind. If I was consciously leaving, I would have carried everything with me. The only saving grace was when my parents left in April in a U-Haul meant for vegetables and fruits, the ferry, all that stuff. They left in the back of that U-Haul. They carried a bag full of my certificates. They thought everything was in there. That was the only saving. That was the only thing that they got for me. The only thing that I got with me was a bag full of clothes that to winter wear in Delhi.
When we reached Jammu, again there was zero media coverage, and that is something I feel really strongly about, because we are living this. This was in 1947, where things were totally chaotic. This is 1990. There is mainstream media. Okay, there's no Facebook, Twitter, and things like that, but there is still mainstream media, and there was newspapers, there were local newspapers, but there was zero coverage, absolutely zero coverage, to the sense that in 1990, I was a first-year medical student, and I went to Bhopal. For a few months, I didn't know if I was going to be able to continue my medical studies, but then eventually we were told that we were being sent in batches to BJP governed states in the country where we would get to play. So me and two of my friends, we were sent to Bhopal, Gandhi Medical College, which was very good. But then when I reached there, I realized that the rest of India has no clue of what's going on in Kashmir. Because here were three of us, and we suddenly landed one day in a new class, and people were looking at us and wondering why are these three people suddenly here? What's going on with their own medical college? And so that started off from there, and that's why I feel really sad about it, because no media, there was no media coverage. So rest of the country, which would probably have at least come to our help, or at least there would have been some awakening or understanding of what was going on in Kashmir, that was non-existent. And I felt really upset about it. So we had to really start from point zero. So one person to the next, we had to tell our story to each and every person we encountered since 1990. Whereas if there was some media coverage, at least the rest of the India would have understood what was going on and at least given us some help, or at least even a kind word. But that wasn't happening, because no one knew what was going on. And this was replicated not just to me, it was replicated all across the country, because we went in different batches to various parts of the country and no one seemed to know. And so that was very shocking.
Point of media coverage and all. Local newspapers did carry the threats that these terrorist organizations would have for us. They had the time, energy, money, resources to carry those threats in their local newspapers. The basic fact that women, the minority women, were asked to wear a bindi, and that was all over the place. Those pamphlets and wherever that was circulated, that was okay, because they wanted us to be identifiable, targeted, and kind of noticeable, so that they know that these are Hindu girls. Those threats were carried openly. So it's not that media wasn't active there. Media was active to the selective few, or the people that owned the state at that time, owned Kashmir at that time. For us, media was nowhere. So whether it was within J&K or outside of J&K, media was nowhere for us.
It's very hard when you are a child to understand what's going on, but certainly when my parents had to start over, especially when they had newly constructed house in Srinagar and they didn't want to leave, and they had to deal with moving places and coming to Bangalore. That's where I grew up. And we lived in a very small, I wouldn't call it, it's called quarters. They're called quarters, and they're like 10 by 10 really. And for us, why it didn't make a difference as kids is because we were given that love that parents would give to a child. However, there are snippets of those times when you basically are like, this doesn't make sense, like because my mom there was a mice who would bite her while she's doing dishes, and this was Bangalore, and she didn't know how to deal with mice or cockroaches, because I don't think they were really there in Kashmir. And and then she used to go to the vegetable vendors and say, can you just reduce the price, because we are refugees. And nobody knew about it. Nobody knew and we were in a place where the people didn't understand the language we were speaking. At that time, Bangaloreans really didn't speak Hindi, English, or such languages. They were in Kannada and stuff. So we had to adapt. But having said that, I think our community and my parents especially also emphasize on education and emphasize on secularism in spite of what happened. I don't have bitterness against any other religion. I have a lot of friends who are Muslims, but we have to call a spade, really, that what happened to us was because of what religion we were from, and that it happened because the Muslims wanted the state of Kashmir, Jammu Kashmir. So it also tells me, what what other people have gone through who have lost people in their family, like Swapna ji, who was earlier here. And thankfully, we did not lose anybody in our house by a terrorist attack. But my grandparents, both my grandparents, died of heart attack soon, within 6 months of the forced exodus in Jammu, my dad's side. And I want to just share, add to Ruchi's comment about the situation in the refugee camps, in the tents. While we didn't personally live there, because we had, like my dad's sister used to live in Jammu, so she gave us, we could stay with her. But many of my mother's family members were in the tents, and I remember visiting them not just during the exodus, but we used to go back during summer vacation to my grandmother's house, my mother's mom, in Jammu, where house as in a room, that's where they all used to live. My mamas, my uncles, aunts, everybody in that room. And we used to visit the tents in the summer vacation. And I remember using the bathroom in the refugee camps. I cannot forget that. There were this fat houseflies, and they were everywhere, and it was like it was so bad, because they used to hit your faces. They used to hit your face, and you could hear like a din, because there were so many houseflies in the bathroom, and it was a community bathroom, and it was hideous, and that scene has never left me. It's just very difficult, because there are many snake bites and stuff that happen. But one thing is for sure, that the sense of community and the sense of value system that we had has not left us.
Yeah, so
whole population, I think, is suffering from PTSD, because one of the things is to come to term, which helps coming in terms with events, is you get a sense of closure. So as individuals, we have this thing that we are living in a safe world, and we are safe because we are living in a safe world. For us, that thing has been shattered forever, because we had a situation where we were not in a safe world, and we were very unsafe. And that is going to stay, at least with our generation, if not to the next generation. And so the trauma never goes. And one of the things which helps in PTSD is there is some kind of a closure. So events happen, people are prosecuted, or there is some sense that justice has been served. And that helps people move on. People have had parents killed. I've had close family members killed, friends whose parents were murdered. And then there have been no FIRs, there have been no prosecutions, there has been nothing. So for trauma to heal, that has to happen as well, isn't it? So we are in a perpetual state of bereavement. When somebody dies, you go through stages of grief where there's anger, denial, bargaining. But the last step is acceptance. And we are still stuck at the acceptance stage, because we cannot accept that living in a free democratic country, supposed to be, the state is supposed to protect you, and it has failed to protect us. So for us, the trauma, I think, is going to continue for our generations. And one of the things about PTSD is, as a treatment, you try and go back to the place and see what happens. And I heard Jaban Singh ji saying earlier that, we should try and go back. Maybe that will heal us. And I did try in 2006. I did try to go back. But it was quite a bad experience, because you have to remember, this is a place where people have been killed and our close ones have been murdered. And then you go to a place where you have to stay in a hotel because your own house has been burned. So how can you kind of come to terms with that? And you have people who are looking at you with suspicious eyes, because they think, why have these people come back? So we've had properties burnt, everything has been looted. You go and live in a hotel. That is not going back. I would rather not going back, because that kind of made me relive all my traumatic experiences, all the PTSD symptoms, which I think I have got as well, because chronic PTSD can last decades. And I think we have all got that.
1990 didn't happen just like that. There was a lot of planning that went into it. Obviously, as very naive, innocent, God-fearing, law-abiding citizens of the valley and the country, we never ever paid attention to it. We were just focused on our on jobs, on studies, making our life, and just staying calm. We made so many adjustments and changes in our day-to-day life so that we don't make any statement of that kind. Like we were patriotic Hindus. We've never said it, being there in Kashmir. We were law abiding. We never had any issues with any neighbor, be it from the majority community or the minority. So the perspective I want to bring in here is it didn't start in 90, it started in 86, when the southern part of Kashmir, Anantnag, witnessed looting and vandalizing of Kashmiri Pandit homes and temples, uh, specifically targeted. At the time, obviously, we didn't recognize it till 1990 happened, and we could kind of correlate the incidents. And to add to this perspective, I do want to say, because somebody mentioned it on Facebook, that how come Mufti Muhammad Said didn't act? He was actually the chief minister of the state at that time. So you can pretty much understand what was going on there. Late 1988 and 89, we could see clear changes in the population of the majority community. The attire changed, the demeanor changed, talk changed, walk changed. There were verbal, written, telephone threats openly. And I mentioned it to you yesterday also. My dad received several, the contents of which he never shared with me till he passed on to the other world in 2017. He mentioned it to me, what actually was written in those notes, because they were written in Urdu, and they were coming from the area commanders of the terrorist outfits. So what was written in there was, you either get out of here, or you just join us, or we're going to kidnap your daughter, we're going to burn you along with your homes, or you just leave this place. That was what was written in those letters. So I never knew what was the actual content of that letter. So he kept it from me, obviously for a certain reason. He was a dad and he didn't want me to get affected with it. Now, all these posters, etc., they were not only sent to us personally. We had each and every location used to have a, what do you call it, a hit list, a list that was posted on a main, somewhere on a electric pole. So as to say, in India, there are so many, huge, those electric poles, and they used to be posted on there, and they used to be a hit list, and you could see your names on there. I couldn't read Urdu, but then people who read it, my father was on there. So you can imagine, though I didn't personally read it, but when I was told about it, you can imagine the terror, the kind of, it was agony, it was pain. Even then, obviously, you don't want to leave your home. I just want to correct this once for all. Please stop shaming the victims. Please stop asking questions of the victim. We are victims here. Yes, it took us 30 years to talk about it. Yes, it took us 30 years because it takes a generation to settle down again. So what we have been through, the evil we have been through. Our parents had their kids to take care of. Our parents had their parents to take care of. They didn't have time to go out and scream their heads off that this is what happened. They kind of took this time to build our lives. And in the process, they lost their youth. In the process, we lost our youth. But we did not go into something like taking revenge. We didn't pick up guns. We didn't shoot anybody. We didn't kill anybody. We didn't land up in jails. We made our lives. And if you happen to see our Kashmir festival that we recently concluded, a month-long festival, that's where we showcased our strength. That is our strength. Our strength is what we are contributing to the society.
Black Lives Matters movement reminded me of, and I thought that it was very touching and very cathartic for the Black community here when I saw a video where a gathering of Black community was invited, and the whites were apologizing to them, not because they personally wronged them, but they are aware that people of their color did wrong them in the past. So I think that kind of reconciliation has to happen from our Muslim neighbors, like we heard from Ruchi and Nirja ji, that we know that have wronged us in the past, even though right now they might or might not be bitter about it. But I think that needs to happen for us to be able to even consider thinking that the people who were our neighbors, whether we can trust them again or not. And of course we have to also make sure that the justice is served for, as far as the murders and the rapes and the loss of property and the forcible the sale of property and stuff has happened, so that we can find our identity back in Kashmir. There is no moving on, there is moving back into Kashmir.
I think with a little bit of change that has been happening for the past 3-4 years, that I could very, very easily say that the fellow Indians have started talking. I'm so glad that, Pushpita, you are holding this today. It's not me or Shafalika or Amrita or Ruchi holding this webinar today. That's a positive sign. And that probably will bring some kind of healing to us, because the moment you realize that your agony, your pain is not yours only, it is the rest of the world is supportive, as the rest of the world has accepted it, slow and steady, that healing will happen. And also, as you mentioned, healing happens when these perpetrators are being tried in the court of law, and literally justice is being served to the victim families. We're all victims. I'm not saying that one is less than the other, but there are real victims, 1,800 plus families that have lost their loved ones to this barbarism. Their family members have been, you cannot even imagine the way they were brutally murdered. They were raped, cut into pieces. I mean, you can only shudder at that thought, but that's where healing comes from. And I do appreciate a lot of people outside our country also being supportive of this and bringing this to the fore and letting the world know. And for us, it's our duty to let the globe, people all over the globe know that this can happen anywhere. Please, please, please watch out for the signs of these changes that are happening around you, because it doesn't take long.
Definitely miss my home in Kashmir. I definitely feel it's so unfortunate that I cannot see my birthplace just because of my faith, because I follow Hinduism, and so I am not safe to see my birthplace, which is so unfortunate. And I want to make a point that Kashmir is a land of Maharishi Kashyapji and descendants of Maharishi Kashyapji. So Kashmir, Maej Kasheer, Maej means mother and Kashmir, Kashmir. That's what we say, mother Kashmir, Maej Kasheer. Maej Kasheer is totally, I feel, that's what I feel like last 31 years. My Maej Kasheer is under pain. She has a lot of pain. She is crying and she's missing us. And what is she missing? She's missing these temple bells ringing. My Maej Kasheer is missing the Vedic chants happening on the Jhelum River, which used to happen on Shivratris. We used to gather on Shivratris on Jhelum River and do puja. That is missing. I want to ask this question to human rights or anyone who is watching this. What was my mistake and my community's mistake that I was made refugee? Can anyone answer me this question? What was our mistake that we're denied of our basic human right to live in our home and live in our motherland? Was it because I was Hindu in a Hindu minority place? Was
Right.
that my mistake? So this is a question for everyone. If anyone can help me to answer.